the road trip method. This is the framework that took me from A1 beginner French to B1 intermediate in just 30 days. C'est aussi la méthode que j'utilise actuellement pour apprendre le Tagalog et l'espagnol en 30 jours, et je vais la partager avec vous. I'll take you step by step through the entire process, starting from stage 0. I'll explain how this framework works and how I think about languages, and by the end of this video, you'll have a list of exercises and resources that you can use yourself. So keep on watching, but first, let's talk about my background and set some expectations. First of all, I am not a language learning expert. I am not him, or him. I'm still very much a beginner when it comes to this entire space. In fact, 9 months ago was the first time that I ever seriously learned a language. En mars 2023, j'ai fait un challenge pour apprendre le français en 30 jours. Et bien que je ne le parle pas encore couramment, je peux tenir une conversation. Du coup, j'étudie toujours le français aujourd'hui et j'espère atteindre le niveau B2 dans les prochains mois. So to be clear, you will not become natively fluent in just 30 days. Fluency is a destination that takes months or even years to reach, and there are no shortcuts. So if you're looking for a quick fix that'll take you to fluency in 30 days, this video is not that. However, if you're a beginner at the start of your language learning journey and you'd like to achieve an early intermediate level within a reasonable amount of time, then this video might be able to help you out with that. And lastly, language learning is not a competition. I am still a beginner in this space and I have so much to learn. Still, I hope that what I've learned so far is able to help you out and get you closer to your own goals. We're all here in this community to learn together. Anyways, let's now talk about the road trip method. There are 3 parts to the road trip method: input, output, and maintenance. If you're a normie like me, then input is the gas. If you're British, then it's the petrol. And if you're better than everyone, next up, output is actually pressing on the accelerator. You can fill up your car with the most expensive, most high quality gas in the world, but if you're not actually pressing down on the accelerator, then you're not gonna get anywhere. And lastly, maintenance is expensive. Furthermore, each of these 3 parts have their own underlying sub-practices, which we'll dive into now with input number 1, guided course. If you're starting from 0, the fastest way off the ground is to have a guided course of some kind. I'm not sponsored by any guided courses, and neither do I have any guided courses to sell you, so it doesn't really matter as long as it works for you. For French and Spanish, I use busu.com and Pimsleur, and for Tagalog, I'm using this book right here. Of course, links are going to be in the description. Eventually, you'll get to a point where you're moving so fast that you won't need it anymore, at which point you can just leave it to the side. After that, the next input in the road trip framework is building your vocabulary. This classic article by Paul Nation found that in English, a much smaller vocabulary size is needed to read than is typically taught in a classroom. He then goes on to cite an earlier paper from 1994 and says, the most frequent 2,000 words of English plus an academic word list provide coverage of about 87% of general academic text and 91% of an economics test. These combined with proper nouns would provide close to 95% coverage. So instead of just wasting our time trying to learn words at random, we're going to focus on learning the ones that give us the most mileage. Nathaniel Drew made an amazing video about this and called it the solar system theory.
The inner circle is much, much larger because that top 10% of words actually accounts for well over half of all language use. And then the next circle takes up another large percentage of the solar system, but much smaller than the first circle, and then smaller and smaller and smaller.
So with this principle in mind, we're going to focus on learning that small percentage of high frequency words that give us the most output. Usually that's anywhere between 1,000 to 2,000 words. Now, a big mistake that you do not want to make, that a lot of people make, is that they just go online, look up most commonly used French words, and then take whatever list they see. But most of the time, these lists are like super inaccurate, archaic, and reflect somebody else's speech patterns instead of your own. For example, why is environmental the 73rd word on this list?
Huh?
One thing that really helped me was Nathaniel Drew's French Resource Kit. It's available on his website for free and includes spreadsheets, audio recordings, a whole bunch of resources for learning French and Italian and Portuguese and a whole bunch of other languages. Another thing that I did, which I think is pretty cool, is that I enlisted the help of AI. So I used this app, Otter, italki.ai. It basically transcribes all of your audio in real time, and it's usually really accurate. So basically, all throughout today, I've recorded my conversations into Otter, and I went through them, corrected some errors, and copy-pasted them into ChatGPT, then asked ChatGPT to take the transcriptions and analyze them for my most frequently used words. I had it generate a list, and then I translated it into French. Now, obviously, some of these aren't going to be direct, translations, hung out, passer du temps ensemble. I'm sure there's a better way to say that. But for the most part, I feel like this is a really helpful framework for me to understand the way that I personally speak, at least in English. We'll see how it works out. Wherever you get your words from, just plug them into a flashcard deck of some sorts. It can be Anki, it can be Quizlet, they can even be physical, it doesn't really matter, just as long as you're reviewing them with spaced repetition. But the important thing to remember is that these words are just the fuel in the car. And while yes, fuel is important, you don't want to get stranded in the middle of the road, fuel alone isn't enough. You see, you can have all of the input in the world, know all of the grammar structures, all the rules, be able to understand fluently, but still not be able to speak. I was like that for many, many years with Tagalog. And so that's why the next and most important part of the road trip framework is output. The purpose of language is communication. After all, languages don't exist in a vacuum. They're dynamic structures that evolve and morph as they're used by people. And so the most important part of this framework is that we're interacting with real people in real time. So if you have a friend that speaks your target language, go give them a call. If you don't have any friends, then go to italki.com. And beyond being the sponsors of this video, they're an actual tool that I use and are a key part of the method, so don't miss this. On Italki, you can take affordable, and I mean college student affordable, personalized one-on-one lessons with qualified tutors. You get undivided attention, instant feedback, and personalized content for your unique needs and goals. To show you what I mean, meet my French tutor, Lambert.
Hey, salut Lambert! Salut, ça fait très longtemps, mec.
I first met Lambert 9 months ago when I was looking for a qualified French tutor. I specifically wanted to find somebody from a similar background as me. As a beginner, it's important to find somebody who also speaks your native language so that you can bridge those two languages. Luckily, Italki's search filter makes it super easy and efficient to do just that. Italki allows you to connect with over 30,000 teachers all over the world. So I'm not kidding when I say that there's a teacher for everyone. I logged in and used their filter to search for a French teacher who also speaks English and is from Canada. And would you look at that? In the road trip method, output is key, specifically having real conversations with native speakers. But when you're still learning a language, you want to have safe, low-stakes interactions, and Italki allows you to get just that, conversation practice with native teachers.
Pour être plus efficace dans nos interactions sociales, il faut très bien écouter, mais aussi s'adapter aux différentes personnes. Est-ce que tu as l'impression que c'est fake ou que c'est hypocrite de changer ton attitude dans les interactions sociales, ou tu penses que c'est une bonne stratégie de communication?
C'est une bonne question, mec. Merde.
This kind of live interaction boosts your confidence and is also one of the fastest ways to improve your speaking and listening skills. Not to mention, unlike an outdated book or course, you can actually learn authentic expressions that real people use. On top of all that amazing stuff, Italki is flexible, convenient, and affordable. I'm a college student, you know what I mean? I don't have money to be spending on language learning like that. Thankfully, Italki isn't a subscription like some of these other platforms. You pay per lesson, and you can book them around your schedule so you can learn anytime, anywhere. Furthermore, each user gets 3 trial lessons, which you can get refunded if you're not fully satisfied. Of course, I want to help you all along and hook you up with a deal, so the first 50 people who click the link below get a special offer. Buy $10, get $5 for free for your first lesson using my code ITALKIAMEER. That's $5 for free using my code ITALKIAMEER. Click the link below to start your language learning journey. Another thing I like about studying with a tutor is that most of the time, they're also polyglots who are passionate about language learning. They've been there and done that, so they have great advice to give.
Pour les débutants, quelles sont les choses les plus importantes à ton avis?
C'est la discipline. Pour apprendre une langue, tu as besoin de discipline. Tu peux, pendant une semaine, être très inspiré et « Oh, je vais apprendre le français, ça va être formidable, je vais aller à Paris. » Mais c'est vraiment, il faut pratiquer à tous les jours avec constance. Ouais, c'est très important.
Incroyable, c'est vrai.
C'est vrai. Non, mais c'est vrai parce que je me souviens que toi, tu étais très discipliné dans ton processus de travailler à tous les jours. Tu sais, c'est pas de skipper, là, tu sais.
Merci, mec. I'll see you around, okay?
Merci.
Bye-bye. He is still the best. He's still the best.
After my conversation with Lambert, I'll review the recording, write down all the words that I didn't know and sentences that I didn't know how to construct. They go straight into the ever-expanding Google Sheet/flashcard deck, which we're going to supplement with input number 3, Immersion. Immersion is crucial to learning any language, mais si vous n'avez pas l'occasion de vivre dans un pays francophone, il vous sera difficile d'apprendre très vite. Now, luckily, this part of the road trip method is all about creating your own French bubble to live in. Here are some of the things I did. Changed my phone and computer UI to French, listened to French music and podcasts, watched French films and YouTubers, read French books.
Je dis toujours à mes étudiants, find your own way to interact with the language in a way that is fun. Sur YouTube, sur Netflix, sur la musique, sur un podcast. And I don't care if you don't understand. You just have to get out there and find ways to engage with the language that are, ways that are going to give you envy to come back for more.
For me, I'm a musician, so I dove really deep into classic francophone music and learned some songs. Hier encore, j'avais 20 ans, je caressais le temps, et jouais de la vie, comme on joue de l'amour, et je vivais la nuit, sans compter sur mes jours qui fouillaient dans le temps. J'ai fait tant de projets qui sont restés en air. Alright, you're getting more immersed, you're speaking with your tutor, you're feeling more confident. Let's now move on to the most powerful output exercise that I have ever seen. Okay, first of all, this is not an original exercise of mine. I actually found this on the YouTube channel LanguageLords. He learned French in 30 days and was the inspiration for me to start my challenge. And he's absolutely insane when it comes to learning languages, and his dedication is like so inspiring. So bro, if you're seeing this, what's up? I'm a huge fan. Here's his exercise that I've modified a bit to make it work for me. I call it story speaking. So to start, you'll need a way to record yourself. Right now, I'm just using the photo booth app on my Mac. Afterwards, you'll pick a story from your life. It can be something you did yesterday, describing where you're from, or your self-introduction. And then you'll just press record and try your best to tell that story for 5 minutes in your target language. The first time you do this, it's going to feel horrible. Vous wanted. You're going to want to quit. It'll be uncomfortable. You're switching in and out of languages because you don't know how to construct things. Nous macaroni. But trust me, it'll be worth it, so stick with it. Afterwards, you'll pull up a spreadsheet with 3 columns. In the first column, you're going to transcribe what you just said. In the second column, you're going to write what you wanted to say in your native language. Then afterwards, you're going to take what you wanted to say and use a good AI-powered translator like DeepL or ChatGPT and put that corrected version into the third column. You'll then move keywords and phrases into your flashcards, use an AI voice or forvo.com to learn the pronunciation, and then learn that corrected version inside and out until you have it memorized. Rinse and repeat for a few hours until you have a repertoire of stories memorized. Now, the beauty of this exercise is that it helps you develop a vocabulary of your own life. You'll learn how to express things in your own unique way and learn the words and phrases that are most relevant to your life. Okay, so the last few outputs that I just shared are both speaking oriented. And while speaking practice is great, it isn't everything. The great thing about writing practice, though, is that it's the exact same cognitive process as speaking, except just slowed down and crystallized in text in front of you. You can work with and correct your mistakes as you see them. The other great benefit is that you can practice this at any time. Whereas it's difficult to practice story speaking in a library, it's easy to write a story in French anywhere. To be completely honest, when I was doing the original French in 30 days challenge, I did not do enough writing, and my French really suffered as a result of that. If I were to do it all over again, I would focus way more on writing, and I would also pay more attention to part 3 of the road trip method, maintenance. The last part of the road trip method is maintaining your vehicle, yourself. When I originally did the French in 30 days challenge, I was so burnt out by week 3. I wanted to quit. I wanted to just leave the entire thing behind, and it really affected my progress. And when I did the Tagalog challenge, again, same thing happened, and I am anticipating the same thing happening when I do the Spanish challenge.
If you don't pay attention to this, you can have all the input and output in the world, but if your car breaks down, you ain't going nowhere. For you English learners, that is a contraction of you all are not, y'all ain't, y'ain't. And so there are 3 simple steps to keeping yourself sharp. 1. Sleep. This is a given. The last few decades of sleep research are so well documented that there's practically no debate that getting adequate amounts of sleep is crucial for proper brain function and effective learning.
A lot of the changes in these brain structures occurs after learning during deep sleep, in particular slow wave sleep.
Dr. Huberman is a professor of neurobiology and ophthalmology at Stanford School of Medicine.
But it also occurs during periods of naps and shallow sleep, or even just periods where people deliberately decompress, where they're not focusing on any one thing in particular.
Dr. Dr. Andrew Huberman also has some fantastic things to say about how deep rest and sleep relate to learning conversational French.
I don't speak a second language, but let's say I decided I was going to learn conversational French. I would learn some nouns or some verbs. I would focus on this, and the greater degree of focus that I bring, the greater amount of acetylcholine is released. But the actual rewiring of the nervous system happens during states of deep sleep or sleep-like states.
He's also the person who introduced me to the concept of ultradian cycles and taking proper breaks.
We exist on these so-called 90-minute ultradian cycles. Everything in sleep is a 90-minute cycle. Everything in waking is a 90-minute cycle. Anytime you're going to sit down and try and focus, you're going to try and do a focused bout of physical exercise or skill learning or musical learning. And the ideal duration is about 90 minutes. Not exactly 90 minutes, but we can reliably say 90 minutes or less.
Okay, now this is where things start to get super practical. Using this concept of 90-minute ultradian cycles, we can take our input and our output and start creating a routine, which I will share with you guys. This is a sample practice plan in the road trip framework. Each one of these rectangles represents an ultradian cycle. At the top, we have input, which takes 30 minutes, and then output, which takes 60 minutes, and then every 90 minutes, you'll take a break or step away for the day. You'll notice that we're putting a lot more emphasis on output instead of input, because I find that in general, language learners already get plenty of input if they're doing a book, if they're doing a course, if they're doing an app with a bird that's gonna attack your family. But the hard stuff is the output, is actually working and producing language, because it's 2 parts, being able to understand and comprehend, but then also being able to produce and to create the language yourself. Here's what a day of practicing might look like. For cycle number 1, we'll do 30 minutes of our guided course. For French, that can be Busu, Pimsleur, or a book like Ameer, or whatever you find that helps you. And then we'll do 60 minutes of story speaking. Afterwards, we'll take a 20 or 30-minute break. For cycle number 2, we'll spend 30 minutes on our vocab flashcards, and then we'll spend 60 minutes writing, trying to implement the new vocab that we've learned. And then perhaps later that night, for our 3rd cycle, we'll spend 30 minutes reading a French book. That sounds fun. And then 60 minutes having a conversation. And then afterwards, we'll rinse and repeat the next day. Now, of course, this routine is just a suggestion, so take what works for you, discard what doesn't, and adapt it to your own life. And finally, the last step to maintaining your car on this road trip is to remember your why. Why do you want to learn another language in the first place? Is it for travel? Is it for family? Is it for the culture? Whatever your reason is, it's important to keep it front and center. Because sure, you can have the fastest car in the world, but if you have no direction or intention, you're still just lost. So get a clear vision of what fluency looks like for you. Write that reason down and put it somewhere that you'll see it frequently. There are no right or wrong reasons to learn a language, just as long as it keeps you excited about this beautiful, life-enriching, and world-expanding pursuit. And if you want to see how I apply the road trip method to learn my mother's native language and surprise her, click right here.